Next, some work with the terrain, and also we might as well put in the skybox now. You'll note that I didn't put the skybox in before I put in the light. It's better to get the light in first, easier to see what effect it's having. When you get the skybox, as you're going to see shortly, it's harder to see the light. So, skybox, a couple ways to get that, and the one we've done before is through Edit Render Settings, and skybox material. Sunny, there are a few. For a change, I'll take that one. And you'll see now that the directional light's a little bit harder to see. So now we've got ourselves a skybox as well. So the next thing we should probably do is work with the terrain, have it something other than white. So we'll go back to our terrain, and into the terrain settings we'll start, instead of putting the mountains and so on, the contours, let's actually put a texture first, so it's just not white, it's easier to see. So edit textures, add texture. This is one we're going to tile across the whole thing. So I'm going to go to grass, but I'm not going to get the grass, which is actually grass models, which we'll see later. I'm going to get grass hill. I'll add that one. And while we're at it, let's add one more tiling texture. Grass, what else? Grass and rock. Let's take that one too. And add. Alright, so even before putting in some highlights of rock, let's just do our terrain contours. So I'm going to use the first here, which is for raising and lowering the terrain. I'm going to make the brush a little bit bigger than that. Keep in mind though that this is a huge terrain that we're looking at. It's just easiest to do it this way, zoomed out. You should probably be zoomed in further than this, frankly, to do it properly, because these are going to be a lot bigger than they seem. So now it wouldn't be a bad idea for me to go in and change to another texture to add a little bit of highlights. And again, if I were doing this more carefully, I'd zoom in, but for this quick tutorial, let's just put some, and the brush is way too big too, but you get the idea, some rocky terrain as well. And then I guess the other two things here for leveling out. So let's actually make one fairly big, and then we're going to go in and level it off to put kind of a plateau. Well, it doesn't look all that great, so the last thing we'll do is we'll go in and smooth. We'll zoom in on this. We'll make it a gradual smoothing to the plateau using the smooth tool over here. And working over, let's next add some trees. So we'll define the only two trees I think that come by default. Add tree, click on the target, and palm is one of them. We'll add the ability to use, and we'll get the other one while we're at it, which is by default the big tree model. We got to add no, add. So now I'll mass place both of those. I've got both of them there, so let's mass place trees. 10,000 is probably a bit much. How about 2,000 place? And then it tells us we can hold down shift to erase. So maybe on my plateau I'm going to erase. Whoops. I want to erase, so hold shift, right? So shift to erase the ones that are already there. Maybe add a bunch more. Ooh, that's way too thick, so tree density. Anyway, you can play around with this and you'll get the idea. Maybe some palms over here. And so on and so on. Just play around. And then the other one that we've got here we haven't used yet for paint details. This is where you can paint in some grass actually models, not just tiling texture, but models. So let's add details, add grass texture, and go get the grass, which is this grass. You'll see how this is different than the one before, and you can play around with all these of course as well. And then I'll paint on some grass, which I'll probably have to zoom in to see the effect of. Do I have it selected? Yeah, you have to really zoom in to see what you've done. Ooh, glory, that's pretty thick. So let's remember that. In the plateau, we'll go to it when we get our third-person controller and see what that grass looks like. It's probably too thick and we'll go back and we'll change it. But that's the basics of terrain.